One of the issues that we brought up was the increase in minimum wage in Ontario. And I thought that we could spend a little bit of time talking about that and maybe putting aside some of the disinformation that's out there as well. And really start to look at it in terms of the different perspectives from both the employees, the employers as well. So let's start with a typical employee. How might they have different perspectives on that increase in minimum wage?
Well, you've got the individual who was making minimum wage, and of course they're going to be thrilled with the minimum wage increase, and because they were living below the poverty line, and you know it can make a huge difference in their life. So their perspective is going to be very different maybe from an individual who has worked many years to make their way up to $14 an hour, and then all of a sudden they're making the same as somebody else that just started at minimum wage. So I think the perspective, you know, that you have to think about is individual circumstances make it challenging for some people and really exciting for other people. And I don't think there's a right or wrong. It's just, you know, different people see it different ways. And, you know, we work with people every day that have been struggling for years and years with minimum wage. And, you know, their perspective, they come in and they're really excited. You know, we've talked to individuals who are discouraged because of the circumstance that I talked about earlier, as far as, you know, they've worked 10 years to make it to $14 an hour. So different people have different perspectives on it.
So in terms of an employee, obviously they're going to see an increase in their take-home pay. The Ontario government says they're not done yet. There's still one more raise to go, and I would imagine that will be dependent on whether or not they're reelected, which was part of their plan. So for an employee, they know that they're going to see another increase. For those people in the workforce that are currently making $15 an hour, do you find that they may have the perception that if the minimum wage has now gone up to 15, that their wage, which was higher than minimum wage before, would probably or may likely see that same increase? Or is that an expectation that they have, do you think?
I haven't heard that as an expectation from individuals that we've talked to, but I have heard people talk about maybe the potential frustration that situation is going to create. It would be awfully nice if employers could afford to do that, but realistically, you know, the wage increase for small employers and, you know, large employers as well is significant. So to be able to do that at the same time, it may not be feasible. So, but yeah, we have heard individuals, you know, expressing some frustration around that.
Has there been any talk as well about with minimum wage? One of the things that I was reading talking about minimum wage and how we get to a minimum wage, and how do we determine what is appropriate for Ontario versus other provinces, but also in terms of skill set as well. So some employers, and I'm not sure if you deal with some of those employers, they also have not necessarily a minimum wage, but a living wage, and which is somewhat different. So are you finding that some of your employers that are advertising with you are not necessarily advertising a minimum wage, but a variety of different wages?
It depends upon the skill set,
Right.
depends upon the industry standard for that specific position. But we see a lot of employers that have struggled this last year to find employees, some of which are entry-level positions that are minimum wage. And we hear people that come through the door that say, by the time I pay my gas and I pay all the other childcare and all the other costs, I can't afford to work for minimum wage. So having that increase, I think we're going to see individuals who are in those circumstances being able to fill those positions. And so there may not be that shortage, but it'll be interesting to see what happens. It'll be interesting to see what changes we see as a result.
Now, from the employer's perspective, other than one or two that have come out and said this is crazy, we can't do this, and some that have reacted quite negatively actually to the increase. What are you hearing from employers in terms of facing the challenge? And I think you were talking about the difference, the somewhat difference between the small independent business owner and maybe ones that are larger businesses as well. What are you hearing from them?
So cost savings in every area becomes something that you look at, because you can't control the minimum wage. So you look at, small things like, what used to be a waste, what was acceptable amount of waste is going to change. So that's going to change in order to save that extra money. But employers are, some of them are saying it is what it is, but you've spoken of some ones that are saying this is crazy. How can we do this? And some employers say, I'm not going to be able to do it. I'm just not going to be able to afford to continue, and that's very unfortunate. Hopefully, they're able to come up with a strategy that allows them to do so. But it is hitting small employers in a different way than it is the larger employers.